Hey there, and welcome back to another video for our Night Run project. I'm Matto, and in this video I want to talk about the process of combining generative art and AI photography in the art for the NFT collection. Let's get started. So we've been working on the project for a little while. We've generated a lot of imagery using Stable Diffusion for the 4 different imaginary fashion houses that are going to make up the artwork for the project. Our goal is to make 2,048 total unique pieces of artwork, which is going to be divided into sets of 512 for each house. So the houses are Iris, Urea, Bronte, and Isa. And I've been working on 2 of those houses, Urea and Iris. And so Urea is the kind of more calm and minimal kind of winter themed house that has this kind of monastic vibe with these statues and these kind of abstracted puffer jackets. And this one is probably one of the most kind of aesthetically restrained and also trends towards monochromatic, even though there are colors in there. It's kind of like many different warmer and cooler shades of white is kind of the main palette that makes up the images. We got to the stage where we had made our 4 layouts, which I talked about in a previous video, which were all combining different photos, but I felt like there was one piece that was missing, and that if we had only done the photo combining, it would feel a little too self-similar. And so I've been taking a class as part of the Math Castles community that is being taught by 113, who's one of the artists in that team. And he's been teaching us P5.js, which is the JavaScript version of the processing creative coding library. And for me, coming from the game engine context where everything has to be kind of affected by a lighting model, shaders, meshes, being able to draw pixels directly onto a canvas feels really fun and kind of easy, for lack of a better term. It's like a really direct way to kind of make digital marks. So for Urea, I wanted to add one pretty minimalistic generative component using P5.js. And so I added this kind of what I call jokingly monochromy squiggles, right? Which are these generative line shapes that's made with a Bezier curve lofted across a set of randomized points kind of within a region of the canvas. And then what I'm doing is duplicating those lines out with different widths and different opacities to kind of make it feel almost like a brush stroke in my mind. It reminds me of those kind of fat, wide markers that I used to use to do graffiti back when I was a teenager, right? And so it's got this kind of chisel-tipped kind of feeling and making these white marks across the canvas. And so I made 2 applications of this technique. The first is just applying these white marks to the kind of most billboard-looking group of the set, right? Where we have this kind of landscape style layout, and then I'm applying these white marks, like white on white, so very subtle, but applying them to those images and layering them in. And then the second is a little bit more generative, where I'm combining 2 photos in P5.js, laying out one of the kind of abstract procedural architecture landscape photos as a background, and then placing one of the kind of more portrait type shots over it and randomizing the horizontal placement. So in some cases it gets kind of cropped to the side, some places it lands in the middle, and it gives this interesting kind of generative cropping and composition element, and then layering one of these kind of white squiggle shapes over it. We get this kind of interplay between the shapes in the piece, and I really like the way the white shapes are kind of talking to the shapes of the architecture, the kind of complex shapes of the jacket, and there's this kind of shape language of curves kind of talking to each other throughout the piece, which I'm really happy with where it's gotten to. For the Iris house, I have been working on a set of sketches that are way more maximalist in terms of color and in terms of the generative application. So I created one of the kind of generative line art sketches, actually original, as homework for the Intro to Computing Arts class. And then I kind of took that and applied it back into the photos, initially just sampling pixels from the photo to create kind of procedural color palettes. But then I thought, okay, I actually really like what I'm getting just generating color palettes from these photos. What if I actually apply the photos directly into the composition? And so I started layering in the photos, having some of the lines generated kind of behind the photo, some in front. These kind of glyph shapes get the same treatment, right? Where I'm drawing all these like little crosses and shapes, and some of those go in front, some of those go in behind. So we're kind of playing with layers of generative elements. And I'm really happy with where it's getting to. It's got this kind of intense hypercolor, maximalist, very, very loud and chaotic energy, which is really the kind of aesthetic that I'm trying to create for Iris. And I created that one. And then there's another one, which is a little more calm, which uses a kind of a mirrored horizontal symmetry, duplicating both the photo and the generative elements, just to kind of create a feeling that's a little bit more balanced and a little bit more ordered, because a lot of the internal material is like, you know, complex, chaotic. There's a lot of different shapes and colors going on. So using that kind of symmetry technique makes it feel a little bit more kind of stable and balanced, in contrast to some of the other pieces in the set. So it's been a really interesting process, combining this AI photography together with these kind of more like traditional generative image making techniques. It has really lifted the project out of just this kind of pure AI photography place that it was in, and given it something that I thought was missing. So I'm really happy with that. And basically over the next couple of weeks, I'm now gonna move on to the other two houses, to Isa and Bronte, and add a little bit of a generative layer to those and try to kind of weave these themes throughout the whole collection and hopefully come up with something that feels like a coherent whole. So that's where we're at as of now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're not already, and drop me a comment if you have any questions or you're curious about P5JS or any of the techniques that I'm using. Always happy to chat with you. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.